Hi, I'm Ed. Welcome to Real Talk.
And I'm Charlie. And we have...
Benjy!
Yay! Thank you so much for being with us today. It's an absolute delight.
My pleasure.
Are you comfortable in your PJs?
I'm comfortable.
Amazing.
I'm all about elasticated waistbands. No bouts over here.
Kind of jealous.
Incredible.
Don't restrict me. Don't hold me back.
The whole
No,
time
I love
was on the
that.
overground. I was just sitting there being like, this belt is pissing.
We should have done matching PJs. That would have been
Yeah,
such a look.
Could be a good
Yeah.
episode.
Part two.
We should.
Yeah.
We'll do it part two.
Yeah.
Part two. Okay, so we have your gorgeous book here at the front as a little promo. It came out in 2023.
It did.
A book is such a massive deal. So like whether it came out a year ago or 10 years ago, like we want to talk about it. And we kind of want to start it. We took some inspo from like some of the things that you talk about in your book. And so Med has a couple of questions for you that he's like super thrilled about.
I do. But how are you, really?
Oh, come on. How are you?
Really?
I love that. How am I really? Yeah. Because we're always like, oh yeah, how are you? And it's often disingenuous. And not from like an intentionally disingenuous way. It's just like, we kind of just fall into this routine of like asking these questions without really caring about the answer. And in doing so, we're kind of like, we're not having like human, compassionate interaction. So just adding that like really just like makes all the difference. And sometimes you need to ask twice. You're like, how are you? Like, actually, how are you?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
And in doing so, you're signifying that like this is a safe space. Like I'm giving you some time to actually express how you feel.
Yeah.
So how am I really? I'm okay. I'm good. You know. I think like the start of the year is like rough.
Always.
I don't know if you feel
Always.
that.
Yeah, 100%.
Like,
January blues are just the worst.
It's the Monday of the year.
That's what I say.
It really is. Yeah.
The second question I was going to ask
Go for it.
was, where are you from, really?
Wild that is even a thing.
Yeah.
But also wild that like I've been asked that recently.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought this shit was like over.
This is the thing, like time and time again, I think like progress is never linear. you
No.
know? And like time and time again, I'm just like constantly reminded that we do need to keep having these conversations and keeping them top of mind.
Yeah.
Because I had someone ask me that like at an event like the end of last year.
But
yeah.
What are they trying to get out of it?
I was like, oh, I'm from Croydon. And they were like, no, but you know what I mean, like where you really,
Oh,
where
my
you really from? And I was like, and at that point you click, right? But I was like, I'm not giving you. I'm from London.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean.
That's the end of the
Do
conversation.
you know what I mean? And the thing is like, and I think I talk about it in the book, it's like, you just be direct and specific with what you mean. That's respectful.
Yeah.
You know, what's your ethnicity?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's what you really want to know.
Yeah.
And the thing is like, if you feel uncomfortable to ask that question, then it's probably
A reason.
like, not the right space to ask that question. Do you know what I mean?
I got that question a lot because I'm from Essex.
Okay.
And growing up in Essex, it was that question of like, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, I'm from this place in Essex.
Right.
And they'll be like, no, but where are you? And it's like, you know what they're asking.
Right.
But sometimes it is easier to just be like, well, I'm from here, or I'm from here. And it's like, oh, actually, I'm from London, but I've moved to... And then it's like getting to the point of like, okay, where's your mum from? What clarity do you need from that answer for you to keep asking or for you to even ask in the first place?
It's othering. Like you're trying to other me. You're trying to make me feel different, right? And the thing is, like, people be like, "Oh, well, I wouldn't mind if someone asked me that." And it's like, well, 'cause you're not having the same experience as I am, right? Like, if
So
you
bizarre.
and your parents and grandparents and great grandparents always like lived in Wales or whatever, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just simply not the same. Not generalizing about other people's experiences in the sense of like, I'm not saying that, you know, if you're Welsh, you don't experience like exclusion.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that like your experience is different to mine, so you can't use your experience to justify invalidating me.
It's also just a wild thing to like have in small talk, like say in small talk.
It's crazy.
Like to just meet someone and like that be one of the first things that pops into your head. I just like that's quite I think it's quite telling about that person.
But like you
Be
said,
like, that's one of my sole things I care to know about you.
The whole way you read it from is feeding into this narrative that like we just got here. Do you know what I mean? Like specifically for myself and my community, that like black people haven't been here like before like the last century.
Yeah.
It's just like not historically accurate.
Yeah.
There's evidence of like black Africans living in England like from like the 2nd and 3rd like century. Maybe even before then, right? But it's this narrative that like we are always perpetually outsiders, you know, and not just black people of colour, and you know, and also migrants, right? And it's intentional. It's so they can keep us on the outside and so they can deny us access to resources, opportunities. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy the like dehumanization that still exists, like especially with like conversations around immigration. I did like a debate discussion thing recently with with like 5 other Gen Zers, and it was, I don't know why, I think something that I was saying to these guys when I got back was, I think I do live in a bit of an echo chamber when it comes to like the content that I consume, the people that I surround myself with, and I think sometimes I forget, which that in and of itself is a privilege, that I forget about it, just how backwards like this country still is, and like the amount of people that live here that do have such really, really hateful opinions and hateful kind of like mindsets. And especially around young people, sorry. So like, I just presume that as this generation, we have learned so much more and we've become so much more. And it's like, that's not true actually. There's like so many people our age who have such horrifically hateful narratives around people of colour. Immigration, I mean, in particular at the moment, just seems to be like such a horrific place in terms of that discussion. And it was just really horrible to kind of have that reality shoved upon me again of like, actually, no, you think that it's one thing, but it's just not at all. I even read this in a book the other day. It was like, people stay in their marriages because of the idea of being single is so terrifying and the idea of being single is so sad. That's so offensive to single people. And like this idea of this woman who was like, oh, I realised that I've been taking him for granted when I saw like all of these sad people.
I hate it.
So much.
Why do you think that I want Steve?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
I don't want Steve.
I don't want Steve, you know. I would love to meet my person, but not Larry.
No.
Larry.
You keep him.
I mean, everyone obviously has a preference, and then just being devil's advocate, like I always am.
You love being devil's advocate.
Being in a relationship, I think sometimes it's not so much like feeling like sad that or scared that you're going to be single. I think it's more the thought of like not being with that person. That's what I would think.
Yeah,
it's not a case of like, oh, because I loved being single when I was
Yeah.
single. Like, being single is fun as fuck. Like you said, you go on dates, you do all these things, you have no worries. But I think it's like, no, you don't, because like...
No, I know.
No, I hear that.
I'm just thinking Amy's watching this going, oh, no,
that's why I'm overthinking. That's why I'm overthinking. I'm like, make sure I'm saying the right.
Yeah. But like, I love her so much.
If you're watching, please. But like, I think it's more the thought of like not being with that person and being so comfortable and like getting and because you're in a relationship, you do get comfortable.
Yeah.
That's probably, it's like, oh, you're gonna find that your Larry or whatever.
But that's fine. Like, it's that's very different to when people are like I even saw this TikTok the other day that was like, oh God, I'm so glad I'm not out there anymore. Or like this this concept of like, God, like the London dating scene couldn't be me, like so grateful to like have my boo. And it's like,
I can't.
Shut up.
And the thing is, it's like,
So happy that's not my algorithm.
that's not your experience to speak on.
Yeah, exactly.
Anymore.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, because if you translate it to any sort of other thing, the extent to which that is wild, you know, it becomes more evident, right? Like, it's like, you know, and someone would say this dramatic, right? But it's like you're looking at me like someone who's ill, and it's like, oh, I'm so glad that I'm healthy. There isn't like one set correct way to be, right? So whether you're in a relationship or you're single, it's just a status. It's just an experience that you're having. And it's not inherently bad or good. It's not inherently more moral or ethical to be one or the other, right? It's just different. And, you know, newsflash, some people can be intentionally single for a period.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Everyone's path is different.
Yeah.
Everyone has different goals. Everyone has different ambitions. So being fed all this stuff online, and like you say, the algorithm pushes that. You know, Instagram and social media is the worst for that, to make you feel like you are missing out on a life that someone else is having. And I think society in general does that, and in the way of like, I don't know, you're not drinking matcha. What the fuck? Like, you're missing out.
Can't
Do you know what I mean? It's like little things like
that
that make people like, oh, this is the best thing ever. But everyone's different.
Live your own life. There are two quotes that I really think about to send to myself when I start spying like a Sunday evening, right, about being single, right? The first is that like the longest and the most important relationship you'll ever have in life is with yourself. And the other one is from a Billie Eilish song, actually. And it's just something along the lines of like, people say to me, wouldn't you be happier if you're with someone? Well, but aren't I someone?
Wow.
Interesting.
How many years now have you been a content creator?
Ooh, it was like 4 years now, I think.
Your page has always been like such a kind of educational hub. how have your followers kind of reacted to you as you've gone on? Have you felt like you've always been really supported by like the online community? Like what's kind of your journey been? Because obviously TikTok is a nasty place.
Oh my, it's amazing. I think it's really great that you can post a video and it can reach so many different people all at once. And I've definitely built a community of like-minded people on there who, you know, inspire me every day to keep going. But yeah, there is the other side of it where, you know, your video gets on the wrong side of the FYP, racist in my comment section. I've got to deal with that. And it's a tough one. It is. And I think I've had to really try my best to build a thick skin and also like have like self-care like routines that I go through that ensure that I can keep going and keep posting, keep showing up for my community, because yeah, it's kind of rough. Yeah. But I do love it overall, I can't lie.
Yeah.
Otherwise I wouldn't do it, but it's not easy.
How do you like not care what people think?
I think it's really natural, I think, to care what people like think.
Yeah.
And I think to a certain extent it's healthy, because we exist in community with one another. Like, you know, to not care at all is to potentially be insensitive and be exclusionary. Like, we need to be caring about other people's experiences.
Yeah.
At the same time, we should be caring about it to the point where we're not living our authentic truth.
Yeah.
And again, to be specific, when I say authentic truth, I don't mean like the right to like just like do whatever you want to whoever, right? But just like the, you know, we should be trying to maintain the essence of our being, right? Do you know what I mean? And be centered in who we truly are. And that's tough to do if you're constantly like being swayed by the opinions of others, especially because we live in a society that is not fair and just. So, you know, there are people who, because of their gender or their race or, you know, that sort of thing, like who just face more, I guess, like more like limiting stereotypes, right? Some people are expected to give more of themselves, right? And so for such people, like it's even more pertinent that they really try their best to kind of shut out the noise and like live their life.
I feel like I've seen so many times creators of colour saying something and no one listens.
Yeah.
And then like a week later, like a white person will say it and they'll be like, wow, they ate and left no crumbs. And it's like, but someone said that last week. Like they just didn't get the same amount of attention.
Yeah.
Or if you make a mistake as well, there's an even higher level of scrutiny because you have to be perfect. Because you're representing different communities.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I don't subscribe to that. Sorry.
No, that's good. Yeah, no, you should.
I don't.
Yeah.
It's actually so valid to like change your opinion as you gain new information.
100%.
Yeah,
Do you know what
you
I
adapt.
mean?
Oh God, you need that, definitely. It's gained so much knowledge since these words.
I do, but I forget.
Okay, these are a couple of things you talk about in your book as well, which I feel like these are topics that we've been seeing a lot more over the past few years, but that people still have very different opinions on. So the first one's kind of, what's the difference between being nice and being kind?
It's something that I feel very passionate about. I'm not a nice person. Now, how I describe this is, you could describe a car as being nice, right? That's a nice car. You can describe a car as being kind, could you? Because kind is like, it's an action, it's a doing thing, it's active,
Got you.
right? It's personified, it's human, right? It's about like your actions and your values and how you treat other people. Being nice, it involves some of that, but it's more of a static thing. It's more about being well-pleasing. It's more of a reflection of how people feel about you, not necessarily what you're doing or how you're acting, right?
you.
And also, niceness is also very much tied into societal expectations, right? People who are very much like quiet and, you know, and like very malleable and don't have boundaries tend to be described as like quite nice. And nice is also something like, people were like, oh, they're nice, like, there's not much...
Yeah.
My shopkeeper's nice, he lets me off 50p.
Yeah, I don't
He's
feel
not
that
kind
strongly.
to give it to me for free.
Right. Whilst like being kind is more tied to like doing the right thing for yourself and your community. And like sometimes it's abrasive, sometimes it's loud, but it's like... But it's
true.
It's true, right?
Yeah.
And honest, and yeah. So I really think that it's really important that we try our best to strive to be kind people rather than nice people. And you can be kind in a nice way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a balance. I'm not saying compromise yourself.
Yeah.
Right? But give people advance warning. Do you know what I mean? And also like invest in the bonds of community that you want to benefit from. Right? If you say you want friends, right? You want a society that cares about you.
Yeah.
You need to contribute to that in some way.
Yeah.
Obviously within your capacity, right? But like, you know, there's people on TikTok being like, yeah, well, I know I'm probably going to turn down an invitation, but you need to invite me anyway. And it's like, sorry, if I've invited you out 5 different times across the space of a year and I've given you multiple different options and you've left me on red, you declined everyone, it's not on me that I don't invite you the 6th time.
No.
You haven't invested in this relationship.
Yeah.
So why should I keep expending my energy?
Yeah.
It takes 2 to tango.
Very that. Yeah. So say no so you can be intentional with your yeses.
Leading on to my last question, because I mean, I'm pretty bad at this, but I feel like a lot of British people are. Do you see saying sorry as a bad habit?
I think like it's important to make sincere apologies, right? And oftentimes we can apologize in a way that is like insincere. So there are like ways that we are being like insincere in the sense that like we're saying sorry because we think that's what the other person wants to hear, right? So people like are conditioned to over-apologize often, you know, and this is like a gender thing often to like women, and like it can be a cultural thing. And with that, you're like invalidating yourself, right?
Yeah.
You know, you could be apologizing for like taking up space or just like speaking up. And you're like, oh, sorry, you know.
I'm so bad at that.
Right.
So,
and you're doing yourself a disservice.
and then I realise that I do it and it pisses me off even more.
Right, 100%. But then there's also like an insincere apology to like somebody else because you actually just don't care. Like, sorry you feel that way.
Oh, that's horrific.
Right. Or it's like, oh yeah, sorry, like my intention was this, like, you know. Someone was like to me the other day, I was like, oh, you did X, and they were like, oh, I think you misunderstood. And I was like, no. You can be like, oh, the impact of what I did didn't match my intentions. I apologize for that. I'll try best to have those aligned because actually what I meant. That's different, right? Because intent does still matter to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But for me to be like, I feel this way, and you're like, well, actually, that's wrong. Because and it's like, no, my feelings aren't wrong.
No, and it also doesn't have to be like, if there's mutual upset, that's also okay, but you have to let me express myself of how I feel, and then you're more than welcome to say, like, come back at me and be like, okay, well, maybe I felt this way. That's also allowed, but don't then be like, well, I'm upset too. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so you said 2. So you recognise that I'm upset, but then like let me talk about it.
And I always say, like, literally, like, the steps of a sincere apology is like, 1, actually say the word sorry.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or I apologise.
Some
So you
people
still
actually struggle saying that.
They do.
Like,
they
actually,
do.
like a word that's just can't
Yeah.
come out.
They struggle. So, and then be specific about the impact that you've had on somebody else.
Yeah.
Right? And name it, right? And who's been affected as well. Make sure you're actually apologizing to the right person, or specifying who did you hurt, and why, in what way did you hurt them, and how you're gonna make amends. That's the 3rd step. And it's fine to be emotional, right? But in over apologizing in this emotional way can be a way that people make apologies like insincere because they're making the moment about themselves. They're centering themselves and their emotions over yours, right? You know, people are like, oh my god, like I'm not gonna sleep for weeks after this, and then you're there like, and then because they're making you, they want you to be like, oh, it's fine, and comfort.
Playing the victim when the problem is actually you.
Yeah.
Right, do you know what I mean? Now, if you genuinely feel that way, you apologise to the person, and then you turn around and you go to your safe space, and you get emotional over there. But don't put it on me when I'm the person who's been harmed in a situation. What's that about?
Yeah.
You know? But no, remember when we were walking to this studio?
Yeah.
And there was like a lorry and a wall. And I walked on the right, and so did people. And I was like, oh, sorry. And I'm like, why the f did I just apologise? Just walk past them. Like, I hate when I do that. I always say sorry when I don't need to say sorry. And that person can also do it.
Yeah.
That's the thing that pisses me off.
Do you know one thing that I find really hard to navigate? It's this idea that, like, I'll be walking towards someone and I feel like...
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Like, I feel like as a black person... people expect me to move to the side. If they're like, if I have a white person walking towards me, and the thing is like, that's just not like a me thought. People talk about this a lot, right? And then to the point where there's like people online who are like, I just barge into people now. And I find that really hard because on one hand, it's like, how can I assume that that's what this person is like thinking of me? But I also recognize that there is this like, this prejudice that happens, that exists, right?
It's interesting you say that though about the race, because I think that, but not with the race. I just think that I'm kinder person and more thoughtful to
Interesting.
move out the way.
Yeah.
Instead of it being like, because sometimes I'm like, you could move out the way, but they're just walking straight at me. So me being the better person, I'm just going to move out the way. And that's probably why I apologize when I'm like walking straight into them, because I'm like, oh, sorry, I should move. And then it pisses me off.
But something I say in the book is, I'm so sorry, Michelle Obama, but like, you know, when they go high, we go low, or low, we go high. When they go low, I get the keys to the basement.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
So fair.
I'm so sorry.
So fair.
I'm not always the bigger person.
Yeah.
That's so okay.
I'm not. I'm gonna go smaller than you.
Yeah, that's so fair.
Let's play. I will. I'm so sorry. Sometimes.
But why is
Makes
it
sense.
always like on minority communities to be the bigger people?
No.
That's so dumb. I would love to be like, I used to tell, this is literally my housemate's story, and for about 2 years of my life I told everyone this happened to me, and she got really annoyed at me because it was a funny story, so I just co-opted it. But basically, literally I used to tell, and then I remember I told it once in front of her, and she was like, that happened to me, not you. And I was like, but to be fair, we're like the same person, so it's okay. But basically it's literally just a story of she was walking down Oxford Street, and I guess I think is sometimes as well like, men can be quite forceful, specifically white men. When you're walking towards them, they won't move out the way. And she was doing this whole thing of, no, and this guy was walking and she was like, no, I'm not gonna move. And they ended up colliding. And he like swore at her and was like, what? Yeah. And she got really then like stressed out and panicked and then walked away. And I was like, that is such a thing, because obviously there have been so many. I went to this like self-defense class a while ago, which was really fun, really interesting. And it was all about kind of obviously like things to do to get yourself away from an attacker. And like, you're not going to potentially be able to overpower them, but you will be able to do certain things to like stun them so that you can then run. And it was so kind of interesting because obviously you never know what someone's going to do. So there's the kind of general conversation of like, but you should stand up for yourself. Or if you're a woman, you should do this or you should do that. And that feels great in the moment to feel empowered of actually, no, I should stand up for myself. I don't know who this person is. I don't know what they're capable of. For me, I'm always going to choose the path of least resistance if it means I can get safety. And that's something I find quite interesting.